I'm gonna go ahead and call to order the meeting of the Bloomington City Council. Are we ready? I just gonna start going. Okay, all right, we are ready. And I'm gonna ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Walsh.
Here.
Councilmember Bolin.
Here.
Councilmember Emig.
Present.
Councilmember Becker.
Here.
Councilmember Urban.
Here.
Councilmember Ward.
Here.
Councilmember Crable.
Here.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Here.
Mayor Millawambe.
Here. And we have, we need to allow for Councilmember Montney to participate remotely because
I'll
she's
make a
out sick
motion.
today. Yeah, let's go with the motion.
I'll make a motion to allow
I'll
Councilmember Motley.
Okay, so second, okay, by Councilmember Ward, okay. And are we doing a voice vote?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And just to clarify, I think you said it, but due to illness.
Yes.
Councilmember Walsh.
Yes.
Councilmember Bolin.
Yes.
Councilmember Emig.
Yes.
Councilmember Becker.
Yes.
Councilmember Urban.
Yes.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Crable.
Yes.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Yes. Okay, so council member is now official, and maybe we can check with her to see if everything is working correctly.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Crable.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we have, our IT has notified us is that we are having a relay issue. So sometimes it's playing back when we unmute her. So we're going to do our best to handle that today. But it may be necessary at some point that she might only be able to listen and vote. So
Okay,
thank you.
and we're gonna do electronically, right, voting?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Okay,
And she is logged in that way, so she'd be able
Okay.
to attend that way.
so are we good to move ahead then? I just wanted to see if she was, or do we know for sure that she's on?
We do know that she's online.
Okay, okay.
Thanks.
Good evening. I can hear
All right.
you and thank
At
you for
this
the
point, we're gonna
accommodation.
move to public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We do. We just have one person registered, and that's Scott Steinling. We also received no emailed public comment.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Steinling, if you could move forward.
Scott Steinling, Ward 5. My concern is with the street flooding that was not addressed. There's water all over the street. The inlets are not wide enough or big enough to handle that volume of water that fast. The curb line in certain places is level with the grass on that block. And it's not just on that block, it's all the way up Fleetwood Drive and the whole area. And there are other places in the city of Bloomington that around City Hall, the government center, the library, all of the sidewalks are AD accessible. In the real world, they are not AD accessible. I realize it's being worked on, but that was law in 1990. And, we're at 2023. That does not speak well for the city. The roads in this town, I am embarrassed if anybody would see those in the condition they're in. I did over $900 worth of damage to another car by hitting those lousy potholes. And the city said, we knew potholes were evident, but not that pothole. What do you get? You're going to take on the city, you're going to lose. I think that the city needs to put more money into the roads every year. And if it would have been done on a routine basis, we would not be in crunch mode at this time. Materials were a lot lower, labor was a lot lower, everything was a lot lower. But no, they put it off and they waited.
Okay, thank you. Forgot to read my statement.
I realize that too.
Okay.
There's no further public comment.
Okay, all right, thank you. Now we are going to move on to item 6 on the agenda, which is a recognition and appointments. And at this point, we have recognition of firefighters Cody Cheeseman, Tyler Eft, and Kyle Walder, who have completed their 1-year probation as requested by the fire department. And I'm going to ask Fire Chief West to come forward and give you a chance to speak. And next, the clerk will swear in the individuals who are being commissioned today.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and Deputy City Manager Tice. I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to introduce you to the 3 members that completed their probationary period on February 14th of this year after 1-year probationary. Cody Cheeseman, Tyler Eft, and Kyle Walder started their careers, like I said, February 14th, 2022. Shortly after there, they attended the Illinois Fire Service Spring Academy, which started the 28th of February. Over the next 9 weeks, they completed the Fire Academy and several other courses in order to obtain their basic operations firefighter certificate from the state of Illinois. These 3 members then returned to the station or to the department, spent 2 weeks in our own mini academy where they learned EMS protocols, kind of what we do at the Bloomington Fire Department, how it differs from what they learned over at the academy. And then also got to attend dispatch, see what they do there. After this, they reported their shifts. They were assigned each to 1 to A shift, 1 to B shift, and 1 to C shift, where they rode third man for 10 days, where they were observed by our paramedics to make sure that they were meeting the standards that we believe they should meet. Once they completed that 10 days, they were out on their own with the rest of the guys. So, while they did 10 days at each station, so for about 6 months, they were doing a rotation where then captains would observe them and evaluate them on a monthly basis. And at the 7-month period, then did a hands-on where we again observed them to make sure they were meeting our standards. I'm pleased to inform you that all 3 of these members received high recommendations from their officers for full appointments to the department. So at this time, I'd like to introduce you to each one of them. Cody Cheeseman right here, he's assigned to A shift. Cody is a 2nd-generation firefighter. His dad, Scott, who was a captain on C shift at the Bloomington Fire Department. Cody grew up in Danvers and attended Olympia High School and was in the BACC Fire Science program and EMT program. He attended Heartland Community College where he obtained his paramedic license. Cody now lives in Mioneer with his wife Jory and his his son Lane. Cody previously worked for ambulances in Hayworth and Dale Township. Cody enjoys times with friends and doing things outdoors. Cody stated he got into the fire service to follow his father's footsteps. Tyler Eft, who is assigned to B shift. Tyler is also a 2nd-generation firefighter. Tyler's dad is Greg is lieutenant on the normal fire department. Tyler grew up in Hudson and attended Unit 5 schools. While in high school, Tyler was also enrolled in the BACC program, the fire science program and the EMS program. Tyler also attended Heartland Community College to obtain his paramedic license. Tyler worked as an EMT at Hudson Fire Protection District, Randolph Township Fire Protection District, Bloomington Township Fire Protection District, and then he also worked as DeWitt County EMS as a paramedic before he was hired by the Bloomington Fire Department. Tyler enjoys his days off doing outdoor activities. And again, Tyler stated he got in the fire service due to growing up around it and his dad being a firefighter. Kyle Walder, who's on C shift. Kyle is originally from Goodfield and attended Countryside Private School in Eureka. Kyle also attended Heartland Community College, where he received his paramedic license. Kyle currently lives in Carlock. He enjoys hunting, fishing, boating, anything outdoors. Kyle was a volunteer firefighter at Eureka Goodfield Fire Protection District and the Congaree Fire Protection District. And Kyle stated he got in the fire service because as a child, he always wanted to be a firefighter. And he's achieved his goal now of being a full-time firefighter. So again, I present these 3, and now I guess we'll have Leslie present the oath to them.
If you'll raise your right hand, repeat after me. I having been appointed to the office of firefighter in the city of Bloomington, in the county of McLean, do solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Illinois, and faithfully discharge the duties of the office of firefighter according to the best of my ability. So help me God. Congratulations.
Okay, while you do that, I want to just say thank you for your dedication, commitment to this noble profession. We are very thankful as a community for the work that you do and for taking the risk to place your life in danger to save others. I also do think that it is pretty cool that you finish probation on Valentine's Day. So that's fantastic. Just this past week, I actually spoke with a Boy Scout troop and also a couple of third graders. So I was bragging to them about the many cool things that the fire department does. So you should expect some applications fairly soon.
Good, good. We need them. Again, thank you for letting us present them to you guys tonight. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now I probably should have read my statement. There's an area in the statement where it says any speaker that engages in threatening or disorderly behavior will be deemed out of order and their time ceased. And I'm thinking about the young person who's being kind of threatening during the meeting. And now he's leaving. So we're going to go ahead and move on to item 7, which is the consent agenda. And I believe we have a couple of items that folks wanted to.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to ask that 7H be removed.
Okay, 7H. And then anybody else? No? Okay, sounds good. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 7H?
I will make the motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 7H.
Second.
Okay, so moved by Councilmember Bullen, second by Councilmember Craybill. And Link, okay. Okay, the item passes. There is no nays to announce. And now back to item 7H, Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually asked this to be pulled not because I'm in any kind of opposition, and in fact, I'd like to move that we approve it right away. But I did want to pull it because I think that it would do the public some good to hear a little bit more about this process of applying for these grants and how that works. And so I would ask that city staff give us a bit of an update, just to educate us about these grants and what they're aimed at and how the process works, because I don't think that as many people in the public are aware of them as perhaps could benefit from them.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So in regards to this new program from IDA, HARAP, we don't yet have all of the parameters of the program. They've not done staff training yet. This is a new program for IDA. They're combining their SFR program and their HAP program. So as soon as that training occurs, we will make the, and we have the eligibility requirements and everything set forth in the application available. We will announce that through our regular channels on city social media, on the website, and then the applications, the link to the application will be available on the city's website. All of that is under our Community Enhancement Division. So if you go to the city's websites, go to Department, and then go to Community Enhancement Division, there's a Grants Administration tab. When you go to that, it will list all of the grants that are currently available, whether that's through the CDBG program, John M. Scott, IDA. There are links to the applications that are currently available.
Thank you. And can you translate the acronyms?
Oh,
Yes.
so for IDA is the Illinois Housing Development Authority. Their previous programs for SFR are single family rehab. HAP, I think, was homeowner accessibility program. HARAP is a combination of those for home rehabilitation and accessibility repairs.
And are these grants, grants that individuals can apply for on their own, or do they have to go through another agency that then is granted an amount? How do?
So for this specific funding that is on here tonight, yes, those would be for individuals to apply for.
And is there an upper limit, or is that something you're still waiting on?
Still waiting on training, so we don't yet know. I know that the memo kind of cited previously kind of the income restrictions, but as I said, they've not held any training yet for this new program.
And that's something that will be hopefully available on an annual basis.
Correct. Yes, we're
Okay.
hoping. I believe this may be a two-year cycle.
So
For
in the
this
next
funding.
month or two,
We're
people should be
hoping.
paying attention.
We're hoping the training will occur within the next month or two.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, if I could,
Sure.
thank you, Mayor. So you're saying 350,000 you think is for 2 years,
Correct.
so 175 per year.
I believe that we have 2 years, yes, to get through all of those.
So is that less than what we received in the past if you combine the SFR and HAP program?
I'd have to go back and look at those
Okay, sorry.
because they've been on different cycles.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Councilmember Bullock?
Yeah, I have a question. This is over and above the ARPA that we assigned for the same kind of activity?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. This is a new
So-
program that's available.
Yeah, if you combine the two, that's a significant amount of money, and I'm glad to see it's being used this way. Thank you.
Okay, would anybody like to make a motion?
I already did, but I'll
Oh,
make it
you did?
again.
Oh, okay.
Second.
All right, second, okay, sorry. Okay, then we go ahead and vote. Like, Okay, the item passes. There are no nays to announce. And next item, we're going to move on to the regular agenda, a presentation of the fiscal year 2024 budget, and which is the second update as requested by the Finance Department. And I'm going to turn it over to Deputy City Manager Tyus for introductory remarks.
Thank you, Mayor. Not much to add. This is, as you said, the second update from your favorite finance director and ours, Scott Rathman, to this year's upcoming year's proposed budget. And so, Scott, we'll turn it over to you. Take it away.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Deputy City Manager Tyus. Not to disagree, but This is kind of our third presentation. So we initially did the totals in the general fund, a revenue and expenditure, along with the major tax revenue exhibits. And then last Monday, we presented in detail, $70 million worth of capital projects, the department heads presenting those. So the format for this budget cycle is to keep adding on some information as we go through it. Tonight, we're adding the general fund, what I'm referring to as by function. So that's kind of by departmental grouping. So parks and rec, and we're still including entertainment in that for this year, public safety, administration. And then we're adding in the revenue and expense exhibits for the citywide view as well. So with that said, next slide, please. So some of this will be redundant. That's slide 7. Can we? So,
Do you want slide 2?
yeah. Is it in there? There we go. Okay. So I was saying some of the slides are redundant, but I think consistency is beneficial to understand. We have a complex financial structure, 29 funds, but to run through this from same as a couple of weeks ago, $290.1 million, the largest citywide budget that we've had, an increase of 21 million over the prior year. But I want to point everyone's attention to the capital projects line showing almost $70 million with an increase of $12.8 million over the prior year. So most of the $21 million in increase is accounted for in capital projects. The delta being about 8.2 million. A part of that is an anomaly related to the library. There's a grant that's coming in the next fiscal year related to their expansion, and that project has been encumbered in FY22 actually. So the expenses are in one fiscal year. That grant's going to be showing up in FY24. So there's actually a contribution to fund balance, which we show as an expense in our budgetary process. So it's not really an expenditure, but it's almost adding $5 million to our budget. And then the remainder, a large portion of, we've got a lot of moving parts, but a large portion of the remainder is we have a full budget for the arena, the entertainment division. FY23 was limited in what we put in as far as like shows and related expenditures. So there's an additional $2 million in the arena budget related to a full show budget schedule for 24. The net loss for the arena for the entertainment division is still in line with what it has been. It's about 384,000, but it's a total expenditure. And we look at our budgets from an expenditure standpoint, add of 2 million. The general fund reserves, we're projecting at this point in time, $37.6 million at the end of 24. So I wanted to work backwards with some math because you'll see that in a moment here when I do the monthly report. $3.4 million use of reserves is currently incorporated in the FY24 budget. So if you work that backwards, that means that we're projecting FY23 to end at 41 million. So 41 million less a 3.4 million use of reserves for 24 leaves us a projection of 37.6 at the end of 24. So a lot of moving parts right now, but that still leaves room for larger conversations related to fire stations, et cetera. Cash for equipment, 7.2 million. Again, a strategic initiative by council a few years ago to remove our dependence on borrowing for equipment. We're doing very well in that general fund. We're paying all cash. Those leases are rolling off. So that's creating savings as the years go through. Next slide, please. The revenue growth exhibit is to try to put in perspective the growth in our budget going back to 2016. The top line number is the gross budget. Then we've adjusted that for capital projects, which can roll from year to year. That can be accumulation of reserves. And so we can have a large capital project budget, that can vary tremendously from year to year. And then removing some strategic additions and non-recurring. And what this is showing is that our average annualized growth rate has been right around 3%. From a net operating budget standpoint, basically what we're spending to provide services, not do the actual capital projects. And then there's another view on that on a per population, with $2,100 approximately in 2016, ramping up to $2,600, $2,700, $2,654 projected for 2024, still right around that 3% increase. And then we've added in the actual and encumbered totals at the bottom. And part of the highlighting there, as you can see for FY '22, we had an amount in actual that was greater than our original budget of 251.7. It was 253.5. Well, we executed an amendment for the library expansion that year that wasn't put in that initial budget. And so that's what's driving that. Those statistics are, you have to take those in context because those capital projects, they can add a lot to a total cost per person from a total cost per person perspective. So you can see adjusting for, that we have $3,200. The net, if you remove the library, would be about $2,800 per person. That's still significant. But again, we have that fluctuation related to projects driving that up and down. And I wanted to highlight too, the way we show our budgets, we encumber, and we're basically showing it as almost like cash accounting. But those expenses, like for the library, we're borrowing for that. So we're showing the full project as an expense in 1 year, but we're going to be paying for that over 20 years. So that's another perspective on how that would be kind of amortized over time related to a cost per person. Next slide, please. Major tax revenues. This is a recurring exhibit. This is a little expanded from the monthly report. Really, the highlight here is, for FY '23, when I show the monthly report here in a few minutes, we're projecting $13 million excess over budget for the year. Now, if you look at the bottom of this exhibit, we're really just showing a 4.9 million. I'm going to round it to $5 million increase, adjusting for the levy. So a $5 million increase based on an economic growth and activity. And so what we're showing is, or what I'm trying to point out is a $13 million excess over budget for 2023, and we're only taking 2024 up by 5 million. So we are trying to be conservative. We realize that we hope this inflationary trend will diminish. It's going to have an impact on our revenues, but we still see those revenues staying elevated into FY '24. And that's very similar to other municipalities and other governmental budgeting. Next slide, please. Revenue fund, general fund revenues by category. Went through this a couple of weeks ago, but just to highlight use of reserves, that's that 3.4 million just referenced. Those are for subsidies for some of the enterprise funds that can't afford their own capital projects. They can exist from an operating standpoint, but they need assistance for capital projects. The arena, Lincoln, golf, we're doing an additional $1 million for streets and sidewalks to hit that $10 million mark next year. So we're trying to take care of what we have and utilize the cash that we're fortunate enough to be seeing now in the reserve balances for the benefit of our other funds, to keep them healthy and keep the infrastructure in good repair for those other funds. Taxes, primarily the general fund is funded by taxes. You can see 99.8 million of the $129 million budget is funded by taxes, but we do have a significant charges for services. So, that is really earned revenue, and we're going to highlight that in a moment. Certain departments, charging for their services, that's going up by almost $4 million. And a lot of that is related to ambulance and the GMET program, which we discussed a couple of meetings ago. Next slide, please. General fund expenditures, salaries are up. This is related to new hires. We've been trying to get our staffing back up to where it was back in 2010 over the last couple of years. Specifically for 2024, we have 4 kind of related to building safety and community enhancement for inspectors. We have a couple in HR. We have a recruiter, a training officer, or not training officer, I don't want to use that term, that's public safety, but a training coordinator for HR. So basically focused on recruiting and retention to address those staffing issues that everyone's experiencing. And then you can see increases in commodities and contractuals, increases related to inflation. Other expenditures, there's a drop of 3 million, but that's really related to no ARPA placeholder in the general fund that we had in for 23. That would have come down by 5 or 6 million if it was just ARPA, but in other expenditures, there's also write-off adjustments related to that GMET program that went up. So we're only showing a net decrease of 3 million. And then you see the transfers out kind of related to the 3 million in subsidies for golf, Lincoln Garage, and the 1 million for streets. Next slide, please. Okay, how am I doing it? So I wanted to spend a little time on this, and we're going to expand this exhibit if we can next year, or maybe for the next meeting, to show the percentage given a question from Councilmember Craybill, related to the percentage of these to the total, which we don't have highlighted here, but I'm just going to run through it. So this is the general fund by function. So groupings, admin, that's legal, finance, HR, administrative services, public safety, police and fire, and on down the list, but I'm going to just run through these. So admin, 11.1 million of our $129 million budget. I have these on my worksheet. You don't see them here in this exhibit, but that's about 8.6% of the total budget. Public safety, 65 million roughly. It's half of the total budget. The increase there related to ambulance insurance write-offs. So those are those adjustments that we do related to that increase in the GMAT activity. I'm going to run down the list here. Public Works admin, $10 million, a $1.6 million increase. Vehicles, salary increases, it's about 8% of the total budget. And Parks and Rec, 15 million of a $129 million budget. About 12% of the total budget is for Parks and Rec. And then wanted to highlight, our Connect Transit contribution for the year has gone down. Their request to us was lower, so that did free up some funds as well for doing some of these subsidies and getting that $10 million total target for asphalt and concrete. And then we're breaking out some of the other transfers. So you're seeing the $1 million out of the general fund for asphalt and concrete. The extra $2 million for asphalt and concrete is being made up by ARPA for the coming year, but we're committed to that $10 million ongoing. Capital Improvement Fund, 3.3 million. That's our parks, our city hall, all those kind of general infrastructure facility improvements. We really want to have enough dollars available in the general fund every year to fund at least $2 million in capital improvements for a capital improvement fund. So in a way, you could look at it that we really need to shoot for a $2 million surplus to be able to address those other infrastructure needs. And the way our accounting works is the enterprise funds, they pay for their projects within their funds, but the general fund, it's kind of funny. We transfer the dollars over the capital improvement fund where we execute those projects from there. And then the enterprise fund subsidy transfer, 5.3 million. It's a $1.5 million increase, and those are related to the Arena Golf and Lincoln Garage subsidies. So moving to the right, what we're trying to highlight here is many of our departments have what I'm going to reference is earned revenues offsetting. So we always talk about our budgets in terms of just gross expenses. But you can see for public safety, it goes from 64.8 million, but their net expense is 54.9 million. So that's about a $10 million worth of revenue. Now, a majority of that is related to ambulance runs, but the police have towing, ordinance violations, et cetera. And then the other one I will highlight is Parks and Rec and Cultural Arts. So $15.1 million total budget, and then $11.3 million net expenditures. So $4 million in revenues related to programs, BCPA, ticket sales, the zoo, et cetera. So that's another perspective. And then you could also calculate the percentage of total budget based on those numbers. So the public safety, the 54.9 million, we don't have a total on here, but the net expenditure budget for the general fund is 101 million. So the public safety will be about 54% of the total budget when you look at it from that perspective. So it's 50% from a gross standpoint and 54% from a net standpoint. Next slide, please. Citywide revenues. A lot of these descriptions are going to be very similar to the general fund, because the general fund, I believe, I had the notes written down, is 44% of our total citywide budget is the general fund. So a lot of the variances that are being driven are because of the general fund activity. But the use of reserves, though, you can see 43.7 million. That's a large number, but this highlights the accumulation of reserves in certain funds related to executing projects, or there's just been delays like in the motor fuel tax fund related to certain projects. But we're using $21.5 million of reserves from state motor fuel tax. And the other one I would like to highlight is 10.7 million for the water fund, using of reserves to execute large projects, accumulate those savings, and then we're paying for them out of reserves. The way we budget, we show a balanced budget. So those revenues have already been recognized in prior years, but we're showing them as using so that our revenues match our expenditures. But at the end of the year, if all things being held equal, we'd basically show that our net for the city would be down $43 million at the end of 24, because we're using savings. but it's like a plug. You know, I hesitate to use that number, but that's the way we show our budget as being balanced. Intergovernmental revenue is down by 9.5 million. Okay, there's an additional description that's not in this. I changed the version, but I must have asked for the wrong one to be updated. So there's no ARPA in FY 2024, but also in FY 23, there were IEPA Locust Colton Phase 2 and 3 loans. And for FY, for the coming years, we're looking at either paying cash for those or borrowing for those. Investing income, way up 2.8 million. Lease proceeds, down 698,000 because we're not borrowing for equipment any longer. And then transfer in, this increase due to library transfer to city to pay bond, that's an incorrect description. I'll have to have that changed for this exhibit. I believe the one on the website has been updated. That's related to the transfers for capital improvement, asphalt and concrete, Lincoln parking, and the golf fund. Next slide, please. Citywide budget for expenditures. So salaries, $5.2 million up. 3.6 million of that was related to the general fund and building inspectors and the HR staff ads that I commented on previously. 5.6 million for contractuals. You can see the itemized entries there. 10.8 million capital expenditures. Capital projects are up 12.8 million over prior year. And then I'll highlight the transfer out, 3.2 million. This is to be the same description that should have been on the revenue for transfers in, because that's one of the things that affects our budget. When we're doing subsidies from one fund to another, as the general fund does a subsidy to, let's say, Lincoln Garage, it's a transfer out, that's an expense. And in Lincoln Garage, it shows transfers in as a revenue. So it kind of grosses up our budget. But these are, we're taking advantage of our positive reserves and positive revenue trends to do these transfers. But I just want to highlight that it does have the tendency of grossing up our budget when we do these transfers. Next slide, please. The citywide budget by fund. We had this exhibit 2 weeks ago. It was just in a different place within the presentation, but this is the whole citywide. We have 29 funds that make up our financial structure. Some of the funds have been bundled here to just so we could get them all on one page. For example, we have the debt service funds. We have several of those. Those have been bundled. The insurance internal service funds have been bundled together. I'm highlighting here the split 6.7 million, $6.8 million general fund increase. The library up 3.2 million. Capital improvement, this is a $3 million increase over the $7 million recurring restricted revenues we have for local motor fuel tax and home rule. So $2 million for ARPA and then $1 million from the general fund. But in the future, in our future years, the out years that we include as part of our final budget document, we are looking to make sure that we keep to that commitment and find those dollars within the general fund and subsidize for that extra $3 million every year. And then you can see here the golf fund and the arena fund. Those are the subsidies that I've been referring to, 1.1 million. And the arena fund, part of that increase, so the $2 million is related to the full budget for the entertainment division. Next slide, please. Capital projects by fund. This is a summary of all the detail we went through last week. I've mentioned it several times tonight, but I just wanted to highlight the asphalt and concrete up by $3 million. The details of this can be found at, next slide, please. I'm going to jump to the bottom here first. This presentation, along with the details on all the projects that we went through last week, can be found on the city's website under the documents, finance documents, budget, and FY 2024 page of the website. So in summary, kind of proud to put forward, a budget with $70 million in capital improvements, including $10 million for streets and sidewalks. I think what we've heard is, take care of what we have, improve what we have, the streets and sidewalks. We in the finance department and the department heads across the city are constantly looking for opportunities to strategically use funds, paying cash when we can, instead of borrowing, looking for those opportunities, grant opportunities, wherever we can find them, always looking to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money. So our remaining schedule for the budget as it stands now, we'll be doing the proposed budget presentation March 13th. We have to have a public hearing every year. That'll be on the 27th of March with a final budget adoption is currently scheduled for April 10th. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll pause for questions and comments.
Okay. I see Councilmember Craybill. And
We also want to make sure we ask Councilmember Motney if she has any questions. So, so I wanted to just point out a few things. First of all, thank you, Scott, and your team for great work and helping us be good stewards of our budget and taxes. You said on being conservative on revenue figures, you said we were over, was it this 2023? You expect it to be over by 11 or 12 million, or was that 2022?
For 2023, we're projecting to be over the major tax revenues as there's different categories that we show depending on which report, but in the categories that we're showing on the budget, we're projecting to be over by $13 million for 2023 for the current fiscal year.
And then for 24, is it 5 million more than that 13 million or?
No, it's 5 million over the 23 budget.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
so if you're trying to do an apples to apples, instead of, if we took the 23 budget and we're ending that year $13 million better, we're dialing that back and saying, we're only going to increase our budget, our 23 budget by 5 million, because we're not expecting all of that to come in again. If it does, fantastic, but we don't want to bank on it.
And right, and that helps us and if we have another crisis, right, like COVID.
Absolutely. I mean,
Thanks.
that's the essence of having a good reserve balance.
And wanted to talk briefly about the priorities in the budget. I think you mentioned, with regard to the general fund, when we talk about public safety, 54% of that is spent on public safety. So that's a priority for our community. And then capital projects improvement as the other priority. And if you add those two together, 64 million for public safety, about 70 million for projects. That's about 46% out of the 290 million total budget.
Correct. Yes,
And those are by far the two largest chunks of the budget. Would you agree?
I would agree. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And I think that's it. Thank you. Thank you for the good work.
thank you. Before we move forward, I want to make sure that Councilmember Motney, just want to put her in the queue. If she had any questions for later. I know right now I have Councilmember Ward and then Councilmember Bolin.
I will tell you that we do have her in and that she's emailing with us.
Okay.
I let her, or she has said that if she has questions, she'll email them directly if for some reason she can't speak. So
Okay,
Just
all
for your
right, sounds
information.
good. Just want to make sure I don't forget. Okay, Councilmember Ward.
Thank you for this presentation. I want to draw attention, I know it's been said a couple times, but I want to draw attention again to the 43% increase in capital improvements for asphalt and concrete. 43%. That's up from $7 million to $10 million, 43%. I think that's significant and worth repeating. So thank you for that. I wonder also if you could give some clarification on the IDA fund. And this is, I will acknowledge that I'm just confused about where the HAP funds then do show up if they're not in the IDA funds now, because that's dropping by 67%. And just help me understand that.
Might have to have Melissa come up again, but my understanding and from the first go around, Councilmember Crable asked about this as well. Since the program was in limbo, it was just removed. The amount every year, basically with the community development programs, there's always budget amendments brought back once the grant amounts are known. So we'll be doing a budget amendment related to that. So the dollars were just removed.
Okay. But we should expect some, if not all of that or more to come back at some point.
Agreed.
Okay.
We'll follow up. I'll follow up with details
you.
for council on that, and we'll have more details on that for the 13th for sure, but for council ahead of time.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Bowen?
You always do a great job, Scott. Thank you very much. Could you repeat the dollar amount subsidy from the general fund to the arena?
$3 million.
3 million. Well, that's not so bad. And in the budget presentation, there's more employees being hired and it's 7 for the arena. You don't have to answer these questions tonight. I know I'm putting you on the spot. It would be nice to know how that compares, the expenses for those 7 compared to Venue Works contract in that kind of sense. Like I said, you don't have to answer that now, but I would like to have a general understanding.
I can reply to that generally right now. I don't have
Sure.
the numbers in front of me, but that was a review. Deputy City Manager and Entertainment, Anthony Nelson, we all went through at the time, and the net add was actually less. I shouldn't say net add. For those employees versus the Venue Works total compensation, we didn't have a lot of the details, exact
Mhm.
details on them, but the before and after from a compensation standpoint, we are under from what it was before, just from contracting that out to Venue Works.
Okay, okay. And that includes retirement and health
Mhm.
insurance and all that kind of stuff for the employees.
Yes.
Okay. This is a big one, and I don't expect you to have the answer to this either. I'm always considering liabilities, long-term liabilities. So you didn't mention anything about debt, how much like bond debt we have or any other kind of liabilities. Not that, I mean, we're talking about expenses and revenue, but that's always in the back of my mind because it will be an expense either now, sometime in the future. So some of these questions I'm asking, we're going to have 5 new council members in May. And I want to make sure that there is a general understanding about the volume of liability, work that has to be done. A lot of these plans that are in place, we're in the, 5th year, 10th year, how close are we to meeting the goals of the plans and that kind of thing. So that's why I'm asking these questions, and you can wait till May to bring them back, but I think it would be important and even like a CIP so that staff knows what's coming down the pike for the next 5 years. But I think it would be important for the council to have an overview so that when we're making decisions, meeting by meeting, that in the back of our mind, we know that, there's this big water project coming forward and this how much it's going to cost. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Again, I'll answer like in some generalities. So for the debt, we do have some very detailed information that we present in the budget book exhibit that shows the debt schedule out through maturity for all of our debt. So all of the debt is incorporated. I mean, being able to service the debt is incorporated into the budget. The library with the largest one, their levy increase. accommodated that. For the O'Neill part of that last bond, we're just basically sourcing from that in the general fund revenues, out of general fund revenues. We can add that to that simple, it's a pretty good exhibit because it shows each debt and it shows what it was for and whether or not it's been refinanced, and then like the maturity schedule. We can add that to the presentation so the community and council has kind of a visual of, when debt is rolling off. The CIP, there's kind of like two versions of that, right? Like in finance, we're looking at, we produce 5 years of capital projects in the budget books. So we have the 24 that will get approved with the appropriation. And then we have 25, 4 more years that those funds can afford. So, we take the projects out, whittle them down, what can the water fund afford for the next 4 years beyond 2024? That's a little different than the CIP plan of what's needed, and what needs to be bonded for, et cetera. So there's kind of two versions there that we have to kind of keep in context, but we do kind of have an afforded CIP program that's part of the budget document. So I just wanted to highlight in that. From a,
Well, I mean, so I kind of understand that, but the second part that you were talking about
Yeah.
is what I kind of would like to see brought forward.
Understood.
And also in these documents, it says replacement tax is shared with the library, police, fire, pensions, and bond funds. Could you kind of explain what that means?
Yeah, well, I know the one number off the top of my head is somewhere back in time, there was a $5,000 replacement tax that was restricted for pensions.
Okay.
So when you look at it, what's available for pension, what's restricted for pensions, excuse me, we have the levy, we have the utility tax related to the increase, and then there's a small replacement piece. And then I don't know the number off the top of my head, but somewhere back in time, there was a certain piece carved out for the library as well.
Okay.
And then what was the third one? I don't, it's in the
Well,
document. I
okay,
should know, but yeah,
I know that
But-
sometimes over time,
yep.
little pieces of taxes and
They get
fees are
pushed here and
added
there.
for specific things. So that's what it's related to.
Yes.
Um, I guess the very last question, and I'm sure you don't, this is for Parks and Rec maybe. In the budget, it says, expenses of 500,000 and revenue of 500,000 for O'Neill Pool. And I just was wondering where those figures came from, what does it cover? And again, I don't need the answer tonight, but sometime, in the future, so.
Yeah, that might, we might do like a one-off on that. I did have a discussion with the Parks Director related to your questions previously about that. And there's a conservative approach to next year too, related to attendance. Basically, the general comment to me was taking into account council's requests about, certain amount for affordability, et cetera, and coming up with pricing structure for O'Neill, and then applying the attendance assumptions to it, but being conservative for that first year just to see what happens.
Okay,
So that's why I think there was more of kind of like a matching
sure.
as opposed to overextending.
Well, I just want to remind the community that there is that philanthropic trust for being worked through the Boys and Girls Club to help with the neighbors for the pool. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Councilmember Emick.
Thank you, Mayor. And thanks again for making this as accessible as possible. I just have a couple of general comments. I know that some of the investment for the entertainment division related to BPCA and the arena is new. Like, this is a new initiative to really try to invest in staff who can frankly turn things around there. And I'm looking forward when I become a regular public resident of Bloomington to hearing about some strategic planning from the entertainment division that's there, so that there is a rationale for the investment and a very explicit effort that we're trying to turn things around with what we have and that's useful. The second general comment I'll make is that there's so much opportunity embedded in this budget through grant fundings, through IDA, and this was brought up earlier, just to continually err on the side of over-informing residents, especially if they're being told that they have to fix something in a residence that they've purchased, that there might be funding available for these needs. And that the 50-50 sidewalk repair, as we continue to work our way through making the roads and sidewalks better citywide. There's just a lot of opportunity. And I think folks just don't know about it. They're busy. And it would be really great to direct as much as possible these resources out to the community. But thanks for the presentation.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no other questions, then we're gonna, she said she would email, right? Emma?
We've not received any emails. Oh,
Oh, okay.
I
Go
had
ahead,
been
Sheila.
thank you. I've been given a note that there was some latency issue associated with the audio. So if this is distracting, no worries. I can follow up later. I was just going to ask if we could get some follow-up information about the increases in the underlying commodity pricing of asphalt. I've seen industry studies that indicate that asphalt, which obviously is the primary source that we're using for repaving, has increased as much as 60% in the last 5 years. So just putting that in context so that as we talk about the percentage of increase that we're dedicating to roads, we can understand how much more, if any, are we going to actually be able to accomplish with that, given the significant inflationary rates in that area?
Yes, we'll get more information on that.
Okay. All right. Well, Scott, thank you very much again for a wonderful presentation. Oh, that's right. You're yes, yeah, we just can't get enough of you. Okay. Well, in the meantime, I'm gonna ask Deputy City Manager Tyus if he has any comments he'd like to make prior to Scott's brilliant, yet again, presentation.
Actually, I would. In terms of, no, you're fine, Scott. In follow-up to Councilmember Ward's comments about $10 million in road work this year, and that being an increase, I believe you said, of 40-some-odd% over the 7 million we did 2 years ago. I think it also bears mentioning that it's 4 times what you as a council and we as a staff did in 2016, 2017, when we did roughly $2.5 million in road work. So one of the things we often hear is from the public and from you is that we want you to do more to improve our roads. And we're hearing you. I mean, we hear you. And so I think it's worth mentioning 4 times what we were doing in 2016, 2017, I believe. And if council approves funding based on what is being proposed over the next several years, the 10 million plus each year, we will have done nearly $60 million in road work over the next several years. So I just think it's worth pulling that out of the conversation and mentioning it publicly that we hear the public, we hear you, that you want us to do more, and we are. Understanding members Montney's question about commodity pricing, we get that, but that's still a significant increase over what we've done over the last several years.
Thank you. It's all yours, Scott. From now on, we're gonna have every item will be presented by the Director of Finance. As the rest of the staff starts smiling and laughing in the back, I'm like, yeah. Okay, so Finance Director's report. Slide 2.
There we go. Okay. Get this. So we're 9 months in through January, so that's 75%. Kind of the recurring comments related to that. Our revenues, for sales tax, they're 3 months in arrears. The retail sale occurs, they remit to the state compiles, the state gives to us, and then we were only allowed to backdate our revenues 2 months. So the bottom line is there's a delay. So we're 9 months in, but you can see we only have 7 months for home rule and state. Now in finance, we have some visibility in the current month by the time I give this report. But this exhibit is still showing what we've been looking at. Revenues are tracking well. It's the double-edged sword we've been talking about. It's good for local governments. The inflation is not so good for residents. I mean, we suffer from that as well, from the commodities and contractuals. I always use this term of, we can manage expenses. We can't control them. We can manage them by timing and things of that nature. But once in a while, you have to spend. But anyway, the bottom line here shows that $9.2 million positive variance year to date. And as you can see, that's through the majority of it is 8 months, but the higher volume revenue categories is only 7 months. So we're projecting, though, Chris Darmelin, the budget manager, keeps his finger on the pulse of this. Billy has seen, we have a multi-tab, every revenue, all the tracking compared to prior years, lots of years seasonality information in it. This is where we're projecting, to be $13 million over that we referenced during the 24 presentation. Next slide, please. So we've updated the general fund revenue and expense exhibits to show the projection. So to be able to get everything to fit in there, we have to hide a couple of columns. So essentially, we have the revised budget, the year-to-date actual kind of shows the percent that's been used. You can measure that against the trend of 75, but sometimes there's seasonality, but it just gives another data point for context. And then you can see what we've done as far as like adjusting that budgetary amount to get to the projected year end. So I'm just going to focus on the taxes line. That's the 13 million, 12.7 million for a projected year end of about $105 million. And then the other one I'll highlight is charges for services. You see that's $3.2 million over the revised original budget for $16 million. And that's related to ambulance fees. We have parks programs in there, but the driver of the increase is related to that GMET program, the Ground Emergency Medical Transport Program. It's a Medicaid program. It's a cost reimbursement federal program. The city has to pass through half of the fees to the Department of Health Family Services, I believe, HFS. But it's still a significant win for the city. And council approved, we're switching billing providers related to that service. So we're getting better visibility on that program every month because it was a little difficult to get our arms around it initially. Next slide, please. General fund expenditures. As of now, we're projecting to be slightly over budget related to staff additions in that salary line, some staff positions that were approved during the year. So they're part of our difference from year to year between the 23 budget and the 24 budget, but they're having a financial impact on our current actual. So 742,000 over there, or 743 benefits, though a little under IRMF rate change is helping us out there. Some increases, contractuals. I think that's going to be under that, but for right now, we're going to be conservative and keep it up relatively at that higher level. Capital expenditures, $1.7 million under budget. That's just availability issues. Not being able to find equipment that we need, pushing that out potentially. And I talked about this, I think, the first budget presentation, that part of our budget next year includes items. It always includes capital projects, not so frequently capital or equipment, but rolling almost $2 million of equipment into the coming fiscal year because we just can't get our hands on it. And then the other expenditures came down by 2.5 million. I didn't reference it on the revenues, but originally we had a placeholder for ARPA. We didn't know what we were going to do with the ARPA funds. So we had a placeholder in the general fund, but the plan now is to utilize those for Locust Colton. So instead of showing transfers, since it was still the current fiscal year, we're just reposting those revenues into the water, sewer, storm, and removing the expenditures from these categories, and they'll be part of the budget amendment when that Locust Colton project's brought forward, but in our projection, we're already capturing that as if it's already been approved. So that line has come down by 2.5 million, even though ARPA was more like 5 or 6. But the adjustments for GMET, the ambulance, has gone up. So that's why this is a $2.5 million net change. And then $5 million for transfers out, increase. This is the 3.9 million that we've discussed with council related to Locust Colton. And then tonight was approved an additional roughly almost $600,000 for golf related to being able to save the golf fund. Interest expense, so paying cash for equipment in the golf fund, but the general fund is subsidizing that. So rolling through all the bottom stuff, if you looked at the projected year end, you kind of run down to the bottom. There's that 41 million that I referenced during the FY24. As of right now, looking at $41 million reserve balance, then using the 3.4 million in FY24 leaves us in that mid $30 million range that we started the year over on the left, projected beginning fund balance. Actually, that's actual. I think I hid the column where it shows audited. That $36.6 million is the final unrestricted reserves for the general fund. So year to year, we're kind of looking at that mid $30 million range, give us flexibility related to larger discussions about fire stations, et cetera. If we have a recession, reducing with the projected revenues into next year helps us with that. So we didn't kind of count on that 13 million, but also having these reserves in place helps us there as well. Next slide, please. Enterprise funds, we don't spend a lot of time talking about these. I mean, the revenue is always solid because it's fee-based, other than golf in the arena. I shouldn't categorize it quite so broadly like that. One thing I've been highlighting is the solid waste. At the beginning of the year, Councilmember Boland brought up, it was way in the red of the year-to-date gain loss, and that's because we encumber everything at the beginning of the year. If we sign a contract, like landfill fees, all that kind of stuff. And so every month, the solid waste year-to-date gain loss has actually been coming down. So you can see that it's a negative $2,700 now. We could be adding to reserves for solid waste, although there's lots of equipment needs for solid waste. There's large equipment purchases that need to occur there. So I always want to kind of throw that caveat in there about solid waste. And next slide, please. This is the location of these reports: online documents, finance documents, budget. If the community remembers that, documents, finance documents, budget, they'll be able to find these reports and the FY24 reports. These are under monthly budget and finance director reports. The other ones are under FY24. And that is it. I'll pause for any questions or comments related to the monthly update.
Questions? Councilman Walsh?
That to me, Mr. Mayor? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Scott. Could we go back to slide 4, if we please? Thank you. I'm just looking at the top line, and it really stood out for me. With last year's salaries of 32,600,000. And then projected year in for this year of 45 million. That's an increase of $13 million year on year. And that's about 33% increase year on year. What's driving a 33% increase in our salaries from last year to this year?
I'm trying to find the staffing updates that we presented. We have hired, I'm doing this from memory, City Manager Gleason went over this during the committee of the whole. We've gotten, over the last 2 years, we've retained or gotten back up to that 2010 staffing level, and we've added 15 to 20 people in the general fund over the last 2.5 to 3 years. So, I'll have to look at that variance, because when you're adding 20 people at $100,000 a piece, or it's going to be more than that by the time you add benefits, et cetera. I'm going to have to double check that prior year to date number.
Okay,
And
yeah,
we'll get back
because
to council on
that's year to year. I mean, 13 million, a 33% increase is pretty significant there.
Oh, wait, are you comparing?
I'm looking at your prior year to date.
Right,
Oh, well,
30.
prior year to date actual. What was our total?
Yeah, so not,
last
the-
year?
were you looking at 44.7 versus the 32 though?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the total budget.
Okay.
Okay, so we're not off as much as I thought. So really, the year-to-date actual for this year is 34.5 or 34.4.
Okay, so it's only a 2 million. increase.
Right, so
Okay.
that's the additions adding up there. then.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I was
Okay.
reading that last column wrong. I apologize.
No, I didn't catch it initially either.
All right,
No
thank you.
worries.
Okay, okay, Councilmember Urban and then Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Scott, as always. Typically, if my memory serves right, our sales tax income, I think it was slide 2, if you want to flip to it. But our sales tax income runs behind. So we
Pardon me?
normally have a deficit before we have that positive number. So our sales tax right now is showing the budget variance at 17.58%. Is that we have a lag, if my memory serves right, there's a lag between when the state actually pays and our budgeted amount. So I'm just curious where we're at right now with that lag, looking at the 17.58.
Okay, that's a great question. So when we complete this exhibit, we're taking into account the lag. So we've got the entire year with seasonality. So our yearly budget was 27.8 million. So we do an estimate by month for that 27.8 million based on seasonal history. So like, for the holidays and all that kind of stuff. And then even though there's a lag, we're completing our worksheet based on the month it's associated with. So that 17.8%, like, let's see, for let's say I'm just gonna do this kind of flight. March, what we get from the state in March, it's really for February, December, I think for November's revenues. And we end up just backdating it. I went 1 month too far. We end up backdating March's revenues. Let's use the current, okay? Sorry. Let's just go with January. So what we get from the state in January ends up being booked into December as December revenues. So we come up with an assumption for December and we put that there, and then we're showing that on this exhibit. So there's nothing that's impacting our variance based on the delay. We take that into account when we're doing our reporting, I guess. I should have just
So
started
this
there.
is showing me without the gap, not with the gap, right? That's, I got it.
Yeah, in a way, there's no gap in what we're expecting versus what we get, because we realize there's going to be 2 months. So for this November, when we get that 3 months later and we put it against November, we're like, oh, wow, we were only off by $10,000. Variance is this. So we go back and fill in and then report based on going back and what that looks like at that point in time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Councilmember Ward.
I wouldn't expect you to have an answer to this question off the top of your head necessarily, although there are several directors and other leaders around who might have some of the answers. But I'm curious to know and to perhaps have on a regular basis an update on open positions within the city. What areas they're from and how many are there?
We can definitely, we'll just have to figure out in what format we want to provide that to council or the community. But yeah, that is tracked. There's an open positions list in the system all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I noticed that there are folks from police and fire and community development and so forth all here. So, yeah.
Yep. There's a lot of other departments and
Yeah.
we'd have to spend time adding them up, but
Yeah.
Chief Symington probably knows how many guys he's down and Chief West probably does. Kevin, I'm not sure about Public Works because it's, 600-700 people or however many, maybe not that many, but under his guidance.
Okay. You good? Okay. All right. Okay, Councilmember Montney.
No questions. I really appreciate the update. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. You want to stick around for a little longer? No?
Just trying not to lose anything,
Okay.
lose my notes.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Well, awesome. Great job as usual. Okay, we're gonna move on to the deputy city manager's discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we have 2 slides tonight. Catherine, if you, or someone, thank you very much. March 1st, Friday, Shamrock and Roll, March 3rd from 5 to 8 PM in downtown Bloomington. Encourage everyone to come out for that. I'm sure it'll be a good time for everybody. Next slide, please. And the March Indoor Farmers Market, which is March 18th from 9 AM to noon over at the arena. Again, it's been one of those events that's grown in popularity over the last several months and years. So again, encouraging folks to turn out for that as well. That's it for the slides, but to Councilmember Ward's question, in terms of openings that we have right now, we currently have 13 posted, but that does not take into account any number of officers that the police department is down or the fire department is down. But in terms of actual openings that we're advertising for, there's 13.
Yeah, it's the second one that I'm interested in.
Yeah, I figured. Thank you.
Okay. Under mayor's discussion, I think the only thing that I want to mention is that we have a fantastic team going out to DC for One Voice, which includes Deputy City Manager Tice, Corporate Counsel Jeff Jurgens, and I believe Councilmember Crumpler is also going, correct?
Yes.
Okay, yes, okay, all right. Okay, so they'll be out there representing us and kind of look forward to all the great work that you can do out there and, bring us back some good news. And I think that is all I have. And are there any comments from council member? Okay. I have Councilmember Crable and then Bolin.
Yes, I just wanted to know when I came in, I saw the city's having a job fair, right? March 7th. Is that right? Did I see that right?
Parks Department. Is that what you're referring to?
No, I just saw it said job fair March 7th downstairs. I thought people would be good to remind people of that. But if that's not true, then don't remind.
Okay, Councilmember Bolin.
Yeah, I would like to share that as my mayor pro tem responsibilities. I met with the project managers for the NICO project that's going on in Ward 7 to remediate the coal tar. And some city staff, myself, and the managers went out and viewed the project. And I was just overwhelmed. I had no idea what was involved in this. It's several acres. I can't imagine. I don't know how many acres. They're digging down 30 feet throughout the entire acreage, taking the dirt somewhere else to process it, get rid of the coal tar, and then bringing new dirt to fill in the hole. Hopefully they will be done by the end of Billy, do you remember? The end of this year. But that is why Washington Street is closed off. Because with all the dirt being removed, there is a safety issue with the street maybe collapsing into this hole. So as soon as the hole is filled, the Washington Street will be redone and be opened up for traffic. They also provided a little bit of history. They explained how the city didn't have any gas for lighting, street lighting, cities. Homes and businesses, they went from candle and kerosene to gas. But to produce the gas, they burned coal and then stored the gas and, it was used. Anyway, so there was the byproduct is coal tar. There was use at the time for coal tar to keep the dust out from gravel roads and also to seal boat holes and even roofing and possibly even for politicians. But, and that's a joke. But I was just really impressed with the work that's doing, and I'm very thankful that NICOR is taking care of the issue for the benefit. It's a lot of inconvenience, but once it's done, that whole area will be much better off. So thank you.
Mayor, if I could, I'm sorry.
Sure.
We expect that Washington, the street will be open by summer of 23.
Okay, thank you. And with that said, seeing no other, does Councilmember Motley have anything to say?
No, thank you. I could make a motion for
Okay, thank you.
dismissal.
Oh, well, we
I'll
will
second.
accept that motion. And second by Councilmember Ward. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and the nays can stay.